Okay, hi guys. Today we're going to make an animated 3D text. Something similar to this, and I'll post an example. But this will be our first experiment with actual 3D objects today. Okay, so we're going to take a look at some basic things and make something pretty simple, but will help us cover the fundamentals of 3D and After Effects. So you can make a new project and make a new 1080p comp. Or you can go here and hit this button and make a new composition like this and go 1920 1080p, 30 frames a second. Let's go ahead and make our duration 10 seconds flat. We'll hit OK, and here's our new composition. And we'll kind of start off with a review of what we did last time. We're going to make a 4-color gradient background. And the first step again is to make a solid. And that's a process that we're going to use a lot, is using a solid layer as a placeholder for effects and generators. So let's go to Layer, New, Solid, and we'll choose black and make sure it's the same aspect ratio. And there's our black solid layer. And we're going to go into our effects drawer. We're going to type in grad. We're going to find the 4-color gradient. We'll drag it right onto our workspace. And then you can choose some complementary colors. Again, usually the best is subtle variations of the same hue, but there's no rules in art. So let's make it look amazing. There we go. So there's our background color. You can also use these crosshairs to move around your color blobs like we talked about last time, and you can even animate the position of your color blobs to make it look even more natural. So maybe not so symmetrical, like something like that. Okay, perfect. Now we're gonna go to our text tool, and I'm just gonna click that up there at the top, the T. And I'll click in my workspace, and I'm gonna type my name. And I'll go back to my move tool, and I'll kind of put it somewhere near the center. Now we have 3 effects drawers that we're concerned with today. The character drawer over here, and if you don't see that, you can go Window, Character. The paragraph drawer, same thing, Window, Paragraph. And the Align drawer, and that one I think you probably do have to add Window, Align, right there. And the Align one will let us center the object within our frame, like so. You can center it horizontally and vertically, really important. Here's our character drawer, and here with our text selected, so go back to your text tool, and you can change the font or all the characteristics, the color of your text, and make it exactly the way that your vision expresses itself. All right, cool. And then we can also have, by the way, you have your stroke right here for your outline. If you prefer to have an outline, you can add the width of the outline here, and then it'll use your background color as your outline color. So just change your background color to be whatever color you want your stroke to be. Now, one thing I'll tell you is this is for 2D. Once we go 3D, we're going to lose your stroke until you turn the beveling on, which we're not going to do today. So just kind of a heads up on that. So just get your text there like that. Then in the paragraph, you actually can change the justification of your text within the text box. So you can center it within the text box and then go to the Align drawer and center it in your frame. Okay, so it's kind of 2 steps to center it correctly. And that's important that when you animate it, that you have it center justified so that it revolves and spins or whatever around the center of your object. And we're going to use this centering tool also later to do that, okay? So here's our workspace so far. We just have our name on a 10-second track with a background, 2 layers right here. Okay, so to turn on 3D, you'll see an array of boxes right here. And this is the 3rd one right here is a little cube. And you'll see if you hover over, the tooltip will come up and it says 3D layer. And if you enable this, this will turn into a 3D layer in a 3D scene. It'll create a 3D camera for us here. And it'll also turn on our renderer. So in our preview window, what you want to do is go down here to your renderer and make sure it's turned on to Cinema 4D for this exercise. And then here we have our active camera. So it's going to make a default invisible camera for our 3D scene. But one thing we can do is change our camera view to custom view 1. And if I do this, you see that I can actually see my 3D scene. And we have 3 important handles here to work with. This is our transport control, and this is very similar across many different 3D programs. So what we have here is 3 handles that represent the 3 axes, X, Y, and Z. And what we can do is move our object in 3D space simply by grabbing and moving these handles. Now you'll notice that it gets really pixely when I drag it, and that's because the software is preserving the memory of my system. Another thing you want to do is go over here and turn your preview quality to quarter from full, so that you're not wasting resources trying to preview text in full quality, especially when you're working with 3D. You do not want to preview at full quality. So if I grab this handle here, I can move it in the X axis only. It's locked to the X, so I don't accidentally move it further back in my depth of field or anything. If I grab the Z handle, I can move it in Z space. And if I grab my Y handle, I can move it in Y space. Okay? And as usual, you can just Command Z to undo everything. So there's my actual text again. It's in 3D and I'm in custom view 1. I can go back to the active camera, which is default, or click default to go back to my view here. And here you can see the 3D transport tool, but again, it's hard to see from an angle where you are in 3D space. And that's why we're going to go to this custom view 1, so we get a better sense of where we are in 3D space. You'll also notice that my 4-color gradient background disappears when I enter this mode, and that's because that's not a 3D layer. That's only a 2D layer. So I'm only going to see that with my active camera enabled. But if I go into my 3D mode, I'm only going to see objects that are in 3D. Okay, great. So I have my layer turned to 3D. I have my renderer turned to Cinema 4D down here, and I'm in custom view 1. And now what I'm going to do is dig into the effect controls for my first track here, my text track. I'm going to click on this arrowhead to open it up, and I'm going to dig into geometry options. And here we have our extrusion depth. And if I raise this, it'll extrude my text back in 3D space, like so. And if I change the amount of extrusion, you can see it changes the depth of my 3D object. This is very cool. Now, one thing people tend to overdo is they tend to overdo it and make very, very deep text. But I try to think about it as if the text were in real life. So if this was like carved out of wood or something, it'd be thick, but it wouldn't be super thick, right? It'd be nice and heavy like that. And so there we have our 3D text. Amazing, isn't it? And you can see our transport controls, and you can see our boundary box here. It's showing kind of the parameters of where our text lives. Now, one thing you'll notice is that we really can't make out our text anymore. And that's because there's no shadow, there's no light in our scene. When you turn a 3D layer on, it turns on kind of this omnidirectional light, but we actually need to add a normal light into our scene. So what I'm going to do here is go to Layer, New, Light. And that's going to add a light into my scene. For the color, I'm going to choose almost white. I'm going to go to yellow and make it almost white, but a little bit yellow. And I'm going to take the intensity to 100. And there's my light in my scene. And you can see now it's created a new 3D object. And I can move this around in 3D space the same way I move with the 3 axes handles. There we go. And you'll also notice this crosshair, and this is the target of the light. So if I move this crosshair around, you can actually see the light sweeping past, and you can even animate this, sweeping around in my scene. So I'm going to point the target right at my text. And now it looks really awesome. And if I zoom in, it's really pixely because I'm in quarter preview quality. But I can go back to full quality right here. And ooh, that looks awesome. Okay, so cool. So I'll go back to quarter. Okay, zoom back out. So here's my light. So I'm going to place my light in my scene. I'm going to move it up a little bit. And I can also rotate with these rings. So I'm going to grab the green ring, which is my y-axis. Oh, and this one's automatically oriented. I can kind of swing my camera a little bit the way I want it there. And that looks perfect. Okay, so there's my text. I'm also going to reduce my extrusion a little bit there. Okay, so there's my awesome text in 3D. And that's really basic. Our other things here are motion blur and adjustment layers. Motion blur, when we get into moving objects soon, you're going to animate the motion of these. We'll turn on motion blur to make it look really realistic. Now, one thing that you'll notice is that what we're going to do for this animation is we're going to add a camera. We're not going to actually move or animate our actual text. We're going to leave this still in our scene. And what we're going to do is we're going to fly a camera all around this, and that's going to create the illusion of movement for the text, but really it's the camera that's moving. So let's go back to our default view here. And now we can see, wow, that's so cool. If I turn off 3D on my layer, you can see the 2D version and the 3D version. It's way better, okay? So that's really cool. All right, so there's my name in 3D. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna add a camera and fly it around the scene. So let's go Layer, New, camera. And we're gonna dig a lot into this later, but for now, go ahead and choose your focal length. This is a really, really powerful camera emulator, which really works amazingly well. So like the focal length and everything works perfectly. So if we go to like a different focal length, for instance, you'll notice that on my new camera, it'll change my perspective really nicely. So again, let's go, if you didn't do it before, layer, new, camera. And I'm gonna choose 35 millimeter in this case. And it'll be a 2-node camera, and that's it for now. We'll get into this a lot later, and we'll just hit OK. Now, because this camera is now a track here, I can animate the position of the camera. So if I go to my custom one view with my camera layer selected, you can see there's my camera. It's actually a little camera in the scene, and you can move this around. And that's going to now affect what you see. So the camera that's active, the camera that's in the hierarchy on top, will be the camera you see in your preview window when you go to active camera. So here's the view that my camera is seeing. Now, if I hit P for position and I hold down Shift and I change my camera Y position, you'll see that now my camera is way above my text, and so it's looking down at my text. I can undo that. I can also change my X position, and you can see that if my camera's off to the left now by going negative, or if I increase it, holding down Shift, clicking and dragging, it's way off to the right. Okay, cool. So we're actually almost done with this mini lesson for today. All that's left for us to do is to animate the position of this camera to give some motion to our object. So like we talked about with our last animation, we're always gonna start with where we want our animation to finish. So I'm gonna go to the 2-second marker here by dragging my playhead over. And like we've talked about before, I'm gonna turn on animation by clicking the stopwatch here. And that enables track animation for this parameter. So there's my keyframe that logs my position, my camera position at this time. And now I'm going to move my playhead back. And now I'm going to adjust the position of my camera. You can see why we work backwards, because you're starting with the perfectly centered one. And I'll just do this. And now if I scrub through, you'll see that my text is animating in motion. I can now even go to another one. And I'm just going to put the playhead over here. And with my keys selector here, and if you don't see this again, you can right click here and go to columns and hit keys if you don't see it. I'm just gonna drop another keyframe right here. You can see it down there. That's gonna lock my position. So for most of the middle, it's animating in, locked, and then it's gonna animate out kind of. And what I think I'll do, actually, instead of animating out, what I'll do is I'll move this keyframe back to the end here. And I'm going to increase my Z distance by reducing the Z value. So it's going to kind of slowly, not a lot, but a little bit, it's going to slowly kind of fade away. Just a very subtle motion as the camera will slowly pull out over time. Okay, so it's really cool. Like that. Cool. And then you can always go to your keyframe with this cursor selector here. And if it's not enough motion, there we go. And so there we go, slowly pulling away from the view. Okay, very cool. So there's my 2 animations. Now again, you'll notice that it's not previewing in full quality. If you want to get a better quality preview, you can hit the space bar and see those green preview frames. Those will fill up, and as that fills up, you'll have that frame rendered for preview quality. Okay, so that's quarter quality still. But really what you need to do is export your finished product now. So now with our finished product, we're gonna go to File, Export, and we're gonna add this to the Media Encoder queue. And this is a special program that's going to open up on your computer. It's going to open up a little bit slower, especially the first time you open it. It's going to take about 1 minute to open. And you'll see that my project has been added into this queue. And remember, in Britain, queue would be line, right? So here's a line of files that I'm going to process. So here's the queue of files. And all I can do here is if I just click on this, you can see that I have my preset that I can choose my YouTube 1080p H.264. So there's my codec container. And when I'm ready to render this, I can choose my save location, my file name. And then one final step, you're gonna have to come up here and hit this play button here to start the rendering process, okay? And by doing this, it's gonna render out my file in this separate program, Media Encoder, okay? And there you can see it rendering. Now 3D video does take a while to render. You're looking at about maybe 20 minutes on your MacBook Airs to render this, maybe less, depends, it all depends on your camera motion and stuff like that. but you'll see it rendering slowly over time. And when this video is done rendering, you'll be able to open it up in your chosen location and click on it and test it to make sure it plays. And then at that time, you'll see it in full quality, okay? So that's our lesson for today. What we'll do is I'll post this, but you don't have to turn it in today during class. I'll give you an extra day in case you have any problems. You can come see me tomorrow on Friday, and we'll give you a chance to ask questions during Monarch Hour or whatever, and then I'll post the submission for this over the weekend, okay? So hopefully, I'll put this link on the Blackboard as well, so you can kind of go through it and slow it down or pause it if you need to. Okay, thanks so much, guys. Oh, yo.